Hey guys, today's episode is with Isabelle Kenyon of Calibrate, an online weight management platform. Isabelle is a former investment banker, and she brings some really advanced level and expert level techniques for driving a timeline around a fundraise, making investors kind of move to your timeline and really running a really efficient process. There's some really good insights into this. If you like this episode, please hit that subscribe button and leave us a nice comment, and then email us at info@foundersuite.com, and I will send you a list of 581 active female angel investors. So hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, email us at info@foundersuite.com, and I'll send you this excellent list of angel investors that are all female. So until then, sit back, enjoy the show, get some great tips.
Welcome to How I Raised It, the podcast that goes behind the scenes with entrepreneurs who've raised capital. We uncover the tips, tricks, and techniques they use to get investors to write a check. Strap in and turn it up.
Hi, welcome to another episode of How I Raised It, produced by Foundersuite.com. Today I have Isabelle Kenyon of Calibrate coming to us from New York. How's it going there?
Thanks so much for having me, Nathan. It's all good here.
Very good, very good. What is Calibrate? Let's just go right to it.
Our mission at Calibrate is to change the way the world treats weight, and our first product is a 1-year digital program where you work with a doctor and a coach via telemedicine to make tiny changes to the way you eat, sleep, exercise, manage your emotional health, and have a doctor work with you to change your underlying biology to improve your metabolic health and help you lose weight sustainably and long term.
Sounds good. Do you see a pretty big uptick every New Year's start of the new year with people making resolutions and all that good stuff?
We just had our first January. We launched the business at the end of last June, so we've been live for about 7 months, but it was a big January, and it starts the day after Christmas, really. It starts December 26th.
So I sign up. Tell me exactly, kind of walk me through what happens next and what I've got to do as a customer.
So you learn about Calibrate, you come to the site, you check your eligibility, you make sure you qualify for the program that's based on insurance eligibility for the medications that the doctors use. You fill out a 150 question intake. So you're telling us everything about your health history, your family health history, your weight health history. One of the big insights for me was when you do that in a doctor's office, you forget all sorts of important things. It doesn't always get to the doctor in the most meaningful way, right? A doctor gets the papers right when you walk into the office. They don't get the call outs on what the important pieces are. And so we digitize that in a way that gives you the privacy to fill that out in a way where you'll really share information with us, and then gives the doctor the information that they really need to identify and to talk through with you. Okay. The doctor reviews the information. They order labs for you. You go get your labs done locally at a Quest or a LabCorp near you. And then the doctor gets the lab results and you hop on a 45-minute video visit face-to-face with the doctor, and the doctor talks through with you. How does the Calibrate program work? How does your biology work? What did they see in your lab results? What will happen to your body and your biology over the course of your year-long program? And then you start working through the curriculum. So the curriculum is based in intensive behavior therapy, which is the clinical research word for taking big changes and making them into small changes and making one change at a time. So our curriculum moves through tiny changes to the way you eat, sleep, exercise, and manage your emotional health over the course of the year. So a goal could be to get you to sleep 7 or 8 hours a night, or to get you to exercise 150 minutes a week. And we'll start where you are, and we'll build those up one at a time, week by week over the course of the program. So you're only changing one thing at a time. You're meeting with the coach in video visits, you're reading the content, you're listening to the content through the app, you're tracking every day how you're doing on your goal, how you're doing with your weight, how your emotional health's doing in the app. And then you're moving through the course of the program and the curriculum over that 1 year.
Okay, got it. Great. A lot of questions. Let me think of the best ones to start with. I mean, it all sounds interesting, sounds logical. What's the sort of secret magic that, if I eat better, get more exercise, get more sleep, I'll be healthier? But what's the sort of magic that's weaving this all together in a new format, new package?
The real aha is that we have metabolic systems, and the metabolic systems are these really complex systems across your body, across your behaviors, across your hormones that are controlling how your body operates. And that anything that gets off in that metabolic system can slow you down and can hold you back and can make you gain weight. And the more weight that you gain, the more your body goes into defense mode to maintain that weight. And so the really interesting thing here is like, how do you unlock that metabolic system that's working against you to work for you and to work with you? And so how do you reset those pieces so that they're working together? The example I always give to people is, if you have ice cream and then go sit on the couch, and if you have ice cream and then go for a 10-minute walk, your body's going to process the ice cream completely differently. And so Calibrate is a series of really like ways to help you understand how your body processes different things that you're doing, whether that's eating or sleeping or resting or exercising, but making sure that everything that you do is working in service of your metabolic system rather than working against it.
Okay, makes sense. I think it mentioned, it's a combination of behavior and drugs, right? I mean, prescription medicine. So is there a certain part of that, or let me put it this way: is there always a prescription medication element to it, or is it more behavior focused?
It's always the combination, and that's because clinical research shows us that combination is more effective than either one alone. And so for us, the program is really about taking what we've known in clinical research for a few decades and bringing that to people everywhere, and saying the combination of GLP-1 medications and intensive behavior therapy is today the best known solution we have for long-term sustained weight loss because of the way it improves your metabolic health. The business is a platform. So as new research comes into light, as we learn new things, if new medications come to market, we'll keep evolving. But today, that's what the science shows. And so that's what we deliver to people today, that combination of things.
Got it. Interesting. Now, maybe the hardest question is, it sounds like hard work, right? It sounds like it's going to not be as simple as getting my stomach stapled, or I don't know what, fad solutions there are these days, but it sounds like it's work. So how do you keep people on this platform and really sticking to it? The question of any weight loss program, right?
The craziest thing to me is that there are millions, if not billions, of ways to lose weight, and lots of them work. But what doesn't really work, and what we know, statistically 95% of diets don't work, is long-term sustained weight loss. And so what we really try to do is say, this isn't about the weight loss. This isn't about the quick win. This isn't about losing weight. This is about improving your metabolic health. And as a byproduct of doing that, you will lower your weight. And it's a really interesting thing, because when you lose 10 to 12% of your body weight, which is the goal of the program, you are losing 60 to 70% of the fat in your organs. And so it is really about that bigger impact on your overall health than the quick win, the quick diet.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What's your backstory? Where'd this idea come from?
I grew up with two parents who are the hardest working entrepreneurs that I know. And so I think I grew up with a lot of this DNA in me that I would want to build something and I would want to build teams. And I spent the early part of my career in investment banking and then worked in startups in marketing and general manager roles. I broke my back in pelvis skiing. It was my first real interaction with the healthcare system. And I just thought, this is crazy. The quality of care I'm receiving is incredible. And the delivery of that care is medieval. And how do you fix that? How do you close that gap? And I became particularly obsessed with the pharmacy and all of the different things that went wrong there. And so I joined the early team of a pharmacy startup in New York called Capsule and got to do all different things there. I ran operations, I ran growth, and then I ran business development partnerships at the end. And I was spending a lot of time thinking about, what does the next generation of direct-to-consumer pharma and pharmacy look like? And how do pharma companies get in front of the consumer in a meaningful way? My mom had a doctor's appointment. She called me and said, I really want to lose weight to get back in control of my health. Can you help me? And I helped her find this doctor in New York. And we were both surprised. Like, who knew there were doctors who could help you lose weight? I didn't know that. And then the doctor talked about GLP-1 medications. And again, surprised, like, who knew there were medications that could help you lose weight and how do they work? And so we looked them up, and all the research on GLP-1s is on GLP-1s alone compared to GLP-1s plus intensive behavior therapy compared to intensive behavior therapy alone. And all of the research shows that that combination is more effective than either alone. And so I started scratching my head, like, where do you do this in real life? Like, where do you get the combination of GLP-1s and intensive behavior therapy? And so I started reaching out to the people who had published the research, who had worked on the research, and asking them, and put together this really amazing clinical advisory board of people who have been pioneering obesity and nutrition science for decades, and said, can you help me bring this program, bring this research that you've been doing to everyone everywhere? And they all said, yeah, it'd be pretty cool if it was digital. It'd be pretty cool. You could track people all the time. You could use remote monitoring. You could use Fitbits and smartwatches. You could really understand people's activity and their sleep and their weight. And you could really monitor people in a totally different way than we even can in clinical settings. And so worked with that clinical advisory board to put the business together and launched it last June.
And just without getting too deep into the weeds, just define GLP-1s, like give a broad strokes, high level description of that, please. Yeah.
They're called glucagon-like peptide 1s, and everyone's body makes them. They're hormones that move between your brain and your gut to basically regulate hunger. And so they'll say, food's coming, food's on the way. You can stop eating now. And the medications are called GLP-1 agonists. So they increase your body's natural production of GLP-1. And one of our hypotheses is that there are a lot of changes between the brain and the gut that impact people as they gain weight, and that the introduction of additional GLP-1 basically helps to reset the metabolic system.
Okay, got it. Do you integrate with like Watch and other Fitbit and trackers? Does that all feed into it?
Anything that pulls into Apple Health, Fitbit, or Android, we integrate with.
Last question about the business model. So what is the business model? And is this designed that people will be on this for the rest of their life? Or is it once you've lost the weight, now they're graduating and, taking over?
So today the first product is a direct-to-consumer one-year program. And we are just starting to figure out what the year 2 and beyond programs look like, what the products look like. The medications are FDA labeled and approved for long-term use, but the real answer is no one knows. They've only been around for 15 years, and we don't know what happens when people go on and off of them. And so part of the value in what we're building in Calibrate is a platform to really start to look at that data longitudinally for the first time and say, who are these people? What happens when they go on the medication? What happens when they go off the medication? And to really learn the answer to that question.
Got it. Okay. When did you guys say you launched? You launched in
7 months ago, last June, 2020.
Great. Awesome. So let's talk about raising money for this. How much have you guys raised? How many rounds? And start with that.
We have raised about $27 million.
Mm-hmm.
And the first rounds were from partners at Redesign Health. Redesign Health is a venture studio in New York that builds consumer healthcare businesses. And so I worked with them to get it off the ground. And I think I say this all the time, but it is so incredibly important for your earliest investors to really believe in you and the category, and then to really be patient on what the product is going to be, because you're going to have to iterate quite a bit to figure out what is the actual product that we want in market. And then Forerunner Ventures, Nicole Johnson, led a seed round for us last December. And that for me was really about figuring out, how are we going to describe this to consumers? How are we going to explain this to consumers? What is the product for consumers? And so we spent the next 6 months really figuring out what is the product and how do we talk about the product? How do we sell the product? And then we went live at the end of June. And I think one of the most rewarding things for me, and I think it's really different for different people, was just the first customer, the first person who sees an ad for your product and signs up for it. And for us, we put up a Google ad, and 2 hours later, someone in upstate New York went to the website, spent 2 minutes and 40 seconds on the website, took out a $1,500 loan for the product, no reviews anywhere on the internet, and signed up. And so to me, that was the signal that this is going to work. And we don't know her. She doesn't know us. We've never had anyone do this program before, but we found something that worked, and we put together a team that will make it work. And that was the real moment for me. And so we had a pretty great summer coming out of that, really grew the business quickly, and then decided that we wanted to find Series A partners. And so kicked off a Series A fundraising process in October, and met with, I think, close to 60 or 70 people in as fast a period as possible. COVID is such an interesting time and way to fundraise because it is entirely virtual. And, whereas when I did the seed, I flew out to San Francisco, I went to the partners meeting, I met people, I probably did 1.5 meetings a day on average. When we did the Series A, I was doing 14 meetings a day.
Wow.
You're back to back to back. You can work until 9 p.m. East Coast time, 6 p.m. West Coast time. And I think, the biggest, I know you're looking for advice, and I know your listeners are looking, to hear how it works. And so the biggest pieces of advice I have are, one, resilient. You have to be resilient.
Mm-hmm.
People will tell you no. People will tell you the idea makes no sense. People will tell you it's totally crazy. People will tell you it's not going to work. People will tell you their personal stories. People will tell you their friends and family's personal stories. And you're like, but I have all this science over here.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like when someone says no, it's no. And just the no, be thankful for the no, take the no and move on. And I think use the no to make your story better. And use the no to anticipate questions that people are going to have. And just know that statistically, 99% of people are going to tell you no, and 1% is going to tell you yes. And that's what really, really matters. And I think, I'm someone who takes things incredibly personal, who's incredibly sensitive. And I think for me, that was such an important thing to learn, that just because a bunch of people in a room, and it's pretty intimidating. You go to a VC meetings and it's 8 people in a room or on Zoom, in my case, just firing questions at you. They probably haven't read the 1.5-page summary that their team put together. And, they're saying things like, why'd you miss the January revenue? And you're like, what? It's totally, it's people are looking at your business from the outside and you spend all of your time looking at your business from the inside. So it is this really wild process where it's just a total role reversal as a CEO, where you go from all day, every day, you're trying to get a team to do things, get people aligned, get people excited. And then all of a sudden you're trying to just, convince people that your business should exist. And it's a total role reversal. So I think resilience is really important. I think taking what you hear and what you learn from each meeting and using it in your next meetings is really, really important. I think, the biggest thing for me of being an entrepreneur in general, irrespective of fundraising, is just never giving up. If you give up, it's done, it's over. And if you don't give up, it will keep going. Sure. I know it seems obvious and straightforward, but it is just about getting out of bed every morning, ready to do it again and excited to do it again, and really believing in what you're building and why you're building it.
Yeah. All good stuff. Something you mentioned, you're sensitive. It's impossible to not take it personally, right? It's like I had fundraised for startups that were not my startup, but I had helped them raise. And that was like, don't take this personally. We're just going to go run a process. But then when it's your own startup, it's your own baby, it's your idea that you've given life to, it's impossible not to take it personal. I don't know. Did you come up with any hacks around that, or you just deal with it?
Just keep reminding yourself, especially we live in this world where investors have such incredible personal brands, right? They write these newsletters that we read and they're on Twitter and we follow everything that they say. And we care so much about their opinions and we think they're such amazing thought leaders and idea pickers. And then when they just tell you your idea is terrible, it's just, or we can't get there, or we're not going to get there. And it is some of the most amazing feedback you can get, but it is some of the hardest feedback because those are people who whose opinions you really come to respect.
What was, if you are okay sharing, what was the major pushback you got from those who said no? Anything, you guys are really young, so that could be an easy pass. You guys are just too new for us, or whatever. But was there any comment?
I think when people say it's too early for us, that's the nice way of saying it's a lot of other things.
Yeah, sure.
I think kind of 2 things happened with us. One is people, 75% of American adults are overweight. And so this is a real issue for everyone that I talked to, whether it's their own personal issue or someone they care about's issue. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of embedded bias and it's a really controversial point of view. I'm saying weight isn't about willpower, it's about biology, and you should treat it with medication. And that's really controversial for people. And I think when someone walks into your Zoom office and says that to you, it can really catch you off guard. And so I think there was a lot of bias that came in people's decision-making around does the world need this? Is this the way the world should think about it? Is this the way the science works? And one of my other favorite tips from our fundraise, which I love sharing with people, is we have this amazing clinical advisory board I just told you about. And instead of making them individually available to investors to diligence with, I actually ran 2 webinars with them. And so investors could join. And it created a really tight timeline on the process, which is one of my biggest pieces of advice for people raising. I think if you can keep to a timeline, and I know it totally depends on market dynamics, and I think I got lucky on the market timing, but if you can keep to a timeline, it is so beneficial for your own personal sanity and for your team's focus. But I got to say, here are the 2 dates for the webinar. And so if you want to be a part of this process and if you want to look at the Calibrate Series A, you have to come to one of these 2 webinars on these 2 dates. And it really set a line in the sand on the process. And then I think it really created like real shared consciousness and understanding with investors around like what matters here and what do I need to know about this business and where should I dig in. And it's something that I feel like before Zoom, you would have never, ever thought of. But in this Zoom world, it was like, let's all get on a webinar. All the investors will be private to each other. And
I was going to ask that. That was my next question. Yeah, if they could see each other.
They couldn't see each other, but they could see the clinical advisory board and they could see me. And I hosted the conversation and we took Q&A. And it was a really interesting way to move efficiently, to keep the process on a timeline and to get really good use of our advisors' time and to really share the business in a cohesive way for people.
I like that because that is one of the hardest things to do, I think, is to create this timeline that's not artificial, right? And having these sort of forcing functions. But, you've got these busy advisors. That's a perfect sort of excuse to have a timeline, right? Or, that's good. So I like that. Let's talk about the timeline and process a little bit. You met with 60, 70 people, 14 meetings a day. So A, how did you identify the right people? And B, how did you sort of pack it all into such a nice, condensed, compressed timeline? It's the New Yorker in you, right? Yeah.
It's a combination of things. So one is you have people that you've been talking to over your career and over the course of building a business that you say, well, I'll circle back when we X. And so I had a list of people that I wanted to reach back out to. You have your existing investors make introductions. And then there's a group of people who you're like, I want to talk to these people. Their portfolio makes a lot of sense to me. Their perspective on the world makes a lot of sense to me. And so you ask for introductions to those people. And I lined it all up. And there's a few things I would have done differently in hindsight. One is I would have lined up a day of meetings with like friendlier investors who could give friendly feedback and who, I think on day one, I had a bunch of people who were like my top tier targets, which is probably something I would have saved for day 2 or 3 in the future. But I think, you just line them all up. And I said, I emailed everyone and said, I think I emailed 10 days before and said, here are the 5 days that I'm doing first meetings and I'd love to do it. And the reason that I'm rushing them into this time frame is because I'm doing these webinars on these dates. And so if you'd like to join the webinar, I'd love you to join.
That's amazing. So let me just paraphrase. Here are the 10 days. We're doing first meetings, basically 2 weeks for these first meetings. Grab your slot if you're interested. And then, so carry on with that. So then you have 14 meetings a day times 10.
I will say super tactically, I hated the half-hour meetings. I always felt like everyone was really rushed and like we never got to get into the meaty conversation. And it was either people would either pass right after those conversations or we'd have to have another meeting to basically get through the meat of it. So I would say going forward next time, I would always do the 45 or hour-long meetings. I think they're really good intros. We would just do an intro. We would start with who am I? What's the business? Who's the team? Who's on the team? Why are they on the team? What's our mission? What are we trying to build? And then usually by the end of that call, we get into the traction. Where are we now? How do we know it's working? What do we want to do next? And then I'd say, if you want, I can send you a bunch of background material. You can dig in. And if you want to join the webinar, we'd love to have you. And that was the real forcing function on who continued in the process and who didn't.
Who responded and requested that background information? It was sort of the next card, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
Got it. Excellent. Okay. Anything else? The folks that responded, we get into the weeds on this show, as you can tell.
Well, this is where you get to like the part that you were talking about, like the ambiguous. After that, it's hard to press timelines, and people would say, "What's your timeline?" And I'd say, "We want to make decisions next week." Say, "Do you have a term sheet?" And you'd say, "We're going to have a term sheet." Like at some point, I don't know who can teach you this stuff. I think you just learn it from doing it. But, at some point it becomes too vague a timeline and there aren't hard lines in the sand. But I would basically say after the couple of sessions, I would say, what do you need from me for you to make a decision by X? I think I said by the end of next week. And then when that week rolled around, I said, hey, I'm going to try to make a decision by the end of the following week. So if you could make your decision this week, I can get back to you by then.
Interesting. So, and that we're into like what, week 4 or 5 of the process, more or less here?
We were 27 days from the first meeting to term sheet signed.
Okay. Wow. Amazing. That's incredible. You might have set a new record on this show. We've had I had one lady in the UK who was a pharma, and she hired a COO to handle everything else, and all she did, similar strategy, packed in like 14 minutes a day. But I think hers was even slightly longer. So you might be the winner, the leaderboard here on shortest timeline. Okay, so what do you need to make a decision? Here's where I'm going to make a decision. And then if you can share, how many term sheets or any other like sort of data as the funnel is getting narrower?
There were a lot. At the end, it becomes really personal about who do you want to work with and why, and how to make that decision.
Yeah.
But I think in the beginning, it's such an overwhelming thing to have so many people be introduced to your business for the first time, and for you to be responsible for introducing them. And I think the biggest question I still have is how much of the rest of the team is time to use, because you want the team to meet new investors, and you want the team to meet new board members, and you want the team to spend time, and you want to show off the team because they are why the business works, but you also don't want to distract the team. And so I think that's a really big piece of how I thought about it, and how I'll continue to think about it in future rounds, because it is this push-pull between, like this woman you were just talking about, being a total distraction to operating the business, but also being really important to the relationships that you need to run the business going forward.
Any tips for selecting, because you are running a pretty tight timeline, right? So this isn't getting to know these investors over a long period of time. It's pretty condensed. How did you sort of actually pick at the end who to do a deal with?
So this, I think everyone's different, but I knew from the first call that I had with Emily that I wanted Emily to get involved in the business. Mm-hmm. And I knew that she understood our business better than most people I'd ever spoken to, if not the best. And so I feel like I had this feeling the entire time, like, this is what I want to happen. This is who I want to work with. And I think, it's impossible. You can't hop on a plane. You can't go meet them. You can't go have a glass of wine. You can't really do the things that pre-COVID you would have done with investors. And so, we spent a good amount of time talking on the phone, talking on Zoom, but I referenced her, she referenced me. I think at the end of the day, you are making a massive decision based on gut and relationship.
Emily, is that Forerunner or no? Threshold. Emily, got it. Excellent. Anything you brought from your investment banking background to this? I mean, some of this process running sounds like it could be, but anything else you sort of borrowed from your earlier career? Yeah.
Process and decks definitely came from investment banking days. I also think just understanding how important it is to vet on the relationship side. I was an M&A investment banker, and so no deals ever fell apart over $5 or $5,000 or $500 million. They fell apart over relationships and people not wanting to work together in the end. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was the biggest piece for me, the biggest takeaway. And, with Emily in particular, it was so amazing because both the team at Forerunner and the team at Redesign had relationships with her, and they had spent time with her. And so I think that made me feel like an extra level of comfort that all of the people around the table had worked together before, or I'm not sure if they've worked together before, but they know each other well, and they respect each other. And I thought that was a really important piece too.
If I'm mistaken, I may be, but Forerunner and Threshold are both sort of women-focused funds or female-led funds. Am I right? I could be wrong about this.
They're both female-led funds. They're not female-focused in their investments.
Got it. Okay. Was that a factor, or just sort of coincidence? Were you looking for that, or just coincidence?
I was not looking for it, but to my earlier point, I think the business has always our business is 90% female, our customer base. And so I think the business has always resonated more quickly and more deeply with women. And so I tend to prefer and enjoy the conversations with female investors, because I feel like it clicks a little bit more quickly, just because they, a lot of them are a lot like our customers, or could be our customers or are our customers.
Got it. All right. I won't keep you too much longer. About two more questions. Any Zoom pitching tips that you picked up along the way?
A ring light. I bought a ring light from Amazon right when we started. And
ring light.
If you can't see people and they can't see you, that's hard. Other Zoom pitching tips. I think buffers are really important. I don't know that I would do the back-to-back anymore. I think I would put 15-minute buffers in, and I've been trying to do that in my day in general. In 2021, I think we live in this exhausting Zoom land where you can't run to the bathroom in between Zooms, and that's crazy. So I think buffers are important too now.
Yeah, good. Okay, very last question, but maybe my favorite one. Any last tips or tactics we haven't covered, or if you were, talking to your younger self, doing this all over again, what advice would you give her? Things to do differently. You mentioned one already, but anything else?
I don't know about things to do differently, but I think the thing that everyone needs to hear, and my younger self and my today self need to hear, is don't give up.
Mm.
You just have to hang in there. It is all about resiliency. It is all about showing up. And it is all about not giving up.
Fair enough. Good enough. All right. If people want to learn more, it's calibrate.com.
Joincalibrate.com.
Joincalibrate.com. Sorry, I should have. .com. Any pitch or plug you want to make? Anything you want to kind of promote, or just if you're overweight, check it out. More
Yeah, the mission of the business is to change the way the world treats weight. So to change the way that we think about it and talk about it. And so everyone should check it out, and everyone should learn more about it, and everyone should share it with someone that they love.
Cool. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. Stay warm and dry there in New York, and we'll catch you after your next round and see how the business is shaping up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.